Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Fieldhouse. The semifinals are here. I'm Blake Monroe. I'm joined by Jerry Hamilton, Coach Bob Shipley, Coach Tim Buchanan, and Carl Padilla of the Padilla Poll. And Carl, I know there has to be something interesting that happened last week, right?
No, nothing interesting happened. Believe it or not, there was only 2 shutouts in all the games last week. Of course, if you include the private schools, there's only 44. We don't do 6-man around here for some reason. But 5AD1, 5AD2 had a shutout each, and those were all 2 of them. Nobody scored in the 80s. Nobody scored in the 70s. Nobody won by 50 or more. We had 2 one-score games in 6AD1 and 6AD2. 2 one-score games in 5AD2, 1 one-score game in 4AD1, 3 in 3AD1, 1 in 3AD2, and 2 in 2AD2, and then 2 in the TAPS state final games. In scoring 100 points, we only had 4 total, 1 in 6AD2, 1 in 5AD2, 1 in 2AD2, and 1 of the TAPS games got 100 points. Notes for this week. That's good that my screen decided to do that. Notes this week. Last year when the season ended, Katy was the only school that had 100 games over 500 in terms of playoff games. Now Aledo and South Lake Carroll are tied at the top, 103 games above 500. Katy's at 102, and of course their season's over. Refugio's at 100, and the next closest one would be Mart at 97. So, I was telling Coach Buck earlier before we started on today, Mount Enterprise is 32 points away from the all-time record in 2A. They have 864 for the season. They've given up 485, and so the combined points of them scoring and allowing is 1349, and that's the most in Texas high school football history. So the other thing that happened last week, or didn't happen, was that 2 weeks ago, Coach Allen at Highland Park tied Coach Danaher for the most playoff wins at 93, and they will stay that way for at least another year. And that's what you got, Blake.
Good stuff. It keeps getting shorter and shorter each week. Yep. All right, guys. Well, let's just jump right into it because, like I said, the semifinals are here, and I want to start with 6A here. And Carl, thank you for making these nice brackets a little bit easier to read than the way we've been doing it. So appreciate that. But in D1, we got Allen and Duncanville, and then North Shore and Lake Travis. 2 very intriguing matchups there. Let's start with those guys.
You know what you love about seeing Allen deep in the playoffs? It's a bigger gate, baby. 5,300 students, a lot more ticket sale opportunities. But Carl, what do you got for the game? What's the Padilla poll line telling us on Allen Duncanville?
Hey, you know what's so funny about that, Jerry, is you just lost them 1,500 students, but that's okay.
Oh, because they're 9th grade, right? They're 6,800.
Yeah, they're 6,800. So
yeah.
Let me scroll over there since I was somewhere else at the moment. Duncanville's favored by 2 in this one. If you want to look at the tail of the tape, Duncanville's 11-1, went 6-1 in district. Allen's 14-0, went 8-0 in district. Duncanville scored 445 points on the season, giving up 171. They've scored 147 points in the playoffs and given up 54. Allen has scored 681 points on the season, giving up 140. And in the playoffs, they've scored 152 and given up 56.
Man.
Going to be a good
one. What do you think?
I think I've actually been watching the Allen and North Crowley game. Allen is a lot more talented than I knew they were. I knew they were going to be good up front and well coached, but they are talented, and I think they can win it all.
Bob, I think I accidentally cut you off there. What were you going to say? My apologies.
No. I was just going to say it's going to be a great game. You've got, an Allen team that, was certainly scored 681 points this year as opposed to Duncanville's 445. And then, defensively, they've only given up 140. like Carl said, opposed to 171. So I mean, anything can happen in this game, but I got to give the edge to Allen as well.
And then get y'all's thoughts on North Shore, Jerry, down there by your neck of the woods, and Lake Travis.
Yeah, a lot of people have been knocking on that door, knocking North Shore out this year that were undefeated, and nobody's done it. I think this game is going to be really interesting because, as Carl said, this arguably maybe already is the best Lake Travis defense we've seen. And can North Shore score enough points in this game against that defense? Because, I think most years say, oh, people just pick North Shore. But Lake Travis defensively can control a football game. And I think that's going to be what's going to be very interesting here. I'm not betting against North Shore, clearly. I didn't against Ridge Point. I wasn't going to against Dickinson because it's like, hey, these are undefeated this year. Somebody's going to knock off North Shore. Then they kind of rise up in the playoffs. But Carl, Lake Travis defensively gives themselves a shot in this game, I believe.
There's no doubt at all. I mean, when you got a guy like Carter Buck who's got all those sacks, and I believe he had 4 in the second half last week against San Antonio Johnson.
Yeah.
So you get guys like that, and whatever problems they had. Of course, Johnson has a great freshman wide receiver who's fast, but it seems like they fixed the back end for the second half, and actually nobody scored in that game the second half. So it wound up being an 8-point Lake Travis win. But we go back to the computer, and the computer's got North Shore by 10 points.
That's a big number.
It is. It's the biggest spread of the 20 semifinal games this week.
And
Well,
I think
I was just going to say, if you look at the brackets, certainly North Shore has had a lot tougher road to get there than Lake Travis. So that's why I'm going with North Shore, even though I know Lake Travis has that great defense, as you talked about, but they have had to play some beast to get to where they are today. Not so much. Not that Lake Travis has had it easy, but it's pretty typical of Region 4. It's you're just not going to have the competition that you're going to have out of the Houston area.
And then let's jump down to Division II, guys. South Lake Carroll and DeSoto. I've seen South Lake Carroll twice so far in their playoff run, and then Sheldon King and Austin Vandegrift. But Buck, curious to get your thoughts. Does DeSoto have the horses to slow down Carroll's offense?
Yeah, I know they get the horses. They have them, but I'm not sure they're in good enough shape to stop South Lake Carroll. South Lake is really. I watched a little bit of their game. And I just think they're more of a complete football team right now than what DeSoto is.
And then Jerry, DeSoto, obviously.
Yeah, look,
Carroll.
I agree. And South Lake defensively, I think, is really underrated this year. I know because everybody thinks of South Lake and they think of Dodge and they think of offense, right? But to Coach Buck's point, complete a team. And I would say this, Jermaine Bishop, the Texas signee, is a total freak and one of the best two-way players we've seen in a while in Texas high school football at the higher classifications. But Willis scored 41 on them on DeSoto last week. That's a pretty big number considering Southlake has a more complete team. And Willis gave up 60 to DeSoto. Southlake Carroll's not doing that because Willis defensively was going to have issues as the playoffs moved along. And I know, Carl, you've seen these teams play. I like Southlake here. I don't know what the computer says, but I like Southlake here by a couple of touchdowns at least.
Yeah, and not to take anything away from you, Jerry, but the DeSoto running back did have 7 touchdowns last week.
Yep.
So that'll probably give Southlake Carroll something maybe they haven't seen all year. We have the Dragons favored by 7 in that game, and I can see that happening. You would think they both Southlake Carroll scored 726 points this year, DeSoto 718. So offensively, they're pretty much the same. But Southlake's given up 209 points less in 14 games.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the defense is there. The way to bet right now is Southlake Carroll.
Do you guys think this could be the state championship game, really?
Yes. Personally, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Seton King's got some real speed on that team, But I think if Southlake beats either one of those teams, I could be underrating CE King. I mean, they got the fastest player in America, but I do think the winner of this game will probably win state.
Hey, pregame we were talking about great defensive coaches, and there is one at Vandegrift.
Yeah,
and he beat Summer Creek last year with a great defensive plan, and then wound up beating Salt Lake Carroll in the finals with the same thing, and that was low scoring, 17-10, which is very unlike a Salt Lake Carroll game offensively. Yeah. So Salt Lake Carroll should be the heavy favorite, but they still got to win this week and next week to get there.
And then we'll move on to 5A here and start with Aledo and Lone Star. Should be a great matchup there. And then Port Arthur Memorial and Smithson Valley are your other two teams in Division I.
Coach Buck's picking Lone Star, I know. At 21.
I tell you, I've watched that game, the Lone Star Highland Park game. I've watched it twice now. And Frisco, the quarterback, is a great passer and can run the football. Highland Park had so much respect for him. They didn't really pass rush him. They just kind of tried to keep him in the pocket and make him throw it. And that's what he did, and it worked out for him. I don't know I haven't watched enough of Lone Star to know what their running game is. But if they don't have a running game, there's no way they'll beat Aledo. Brad McCone is one of the best defensive coordinators I've seen at the high school level. And you're not going to beat Aledo if you're one-dimensional. And if all you can do is throw the football, it's hard to beat them. And same thing, if all you can do is run the football, it's hard to beat them. So they're going to have a running game to beat Aledo. And it could be just the quarterback if they decide to do that. But it's going to be really hard on Frisco Lone Star to win the game if they throw the ball on every down.
Going back to last week real quick, were you Aledo came out firing on all cylinders against Ryan. That was a whooping there for the most part. Was anybody surprised a little bit at how much they won by?
Well, I was at the game, and I'll be honest, I was shocked because the score didn't even indicate how dominating Aledo was over Denton Ryan. I mean, it was embarrassing, really. I think Joey Florence left at halftime. It was so bad. But here's what Aledo has done. For almost half the season, maybe a little longer than that, they didn't know who was going to play quarterback. But the Tubbs kid has come on, and not only did he run the ball and has turned out to be one of the best running quarterbacks Aledo's ever had, and Aledo's had some really good running quarterbacks, but he was 7 of 7 throwing the football for almost 200 yards. And now they have what I was just talking about. They're no longer a one-dimensional football team where all they can do is run it. Now they can do both. And Denton Ryan did not have an answer for them. And they're, like you talked about, Lake Travis having a good defense. Aledo might have one of the best defenses in football right now, high school football.
Carl, what's the poll on this one?
It's pretty impressive that Aledo's played 14 games and still hasn't given up 100 points all year, just 95. Aledo by 6 is what the computer says.
Wow. Bob, what do you think about that Memorial Smithson Valley game?
Well, it ought to be a pretty good game. I don't know. I don't know that Smithson Valley is going to be able to hang with Memorial. I think I've got to give Memorial the edge in this game, although, Coach Hill, you never count him out. But I just think that, again, the road that Memorial had to take to get to where they are, it was kind of like in 6A, they are battle tested, proven, not that Smithson Valley isn't, but I've got to give the edge to Memorial. What do you have on that, Carl?
I've got Port Arthur Memorial by 2. Yeah, the impressive thing about Smithson Valley this year is they pitched 3 shutouts. Only Piper scored 14 points against them. And like I said, the other 3 games are shutouts. Port Arthur Memorial needs to score a point or 2 or a bunch because they're at 666 for the year. So never want to end the season with that point total. But it'll be interesting. They have a better offense. Smithson Valley has a better defense. Smithson Valley's only lost to Brennan, which is a 6A school. They should both be there. And again, one of those games that should be deep in the fourth quarter, or maybe even to overtime before a winner comes out of it.
Then we'll jump down to Division II, fellas. Melissa and South Oak Cliff and Richmond Randall and Bernie. And let's start there with Sock and Melissa. Jerry?
Yeah, so look, I'm pretty big on Dallas Sock in this game. Look, I do think what's interesting about Melissa team is I'd be interested to see what Carl says about this. I mean, that look, they're battle tested in that they had a bunch of blowouts at one point, but 1-point game against Argyle last year, I think benefits you deep in the playoffs to play really tight game where your players may feel a little pressure and you then have to go out and perform and win the football game. Because before that, the playoffs, it was 41-10, 62-14, 49-7. So they finally got in the tight game. The guys had to perform under more pressure than they have. And I think that's going to be very important when you go up in South Oak Cliff. Because I think South Oak Cliff, one, they're very, very talented. South Oak Cliff is really accustomed to playing in these big games. I mean, they started the season with North Shore and Duncanville. 2 fourth, and then Longview, all fourth quarter games against really talented teams. And that winner's DNA in that program, I think, means something. So I think it was key for Melissa to be in a really tight 1-point game and to not come into this game with just 4 or 5 blowouts, because I don't think that's where you want to be against a South Oak Cliff team that is accustomed to playing these tight games against even as talented or more talented opponents in themselves and winning the majority of them.
Carl, what you got on that game?
And a little fact here, the Melissa win last week and the Randall win last week, the computer called exactly right. I have South Oak Cliff by 8, and then in the second game, I have Randall by 7.
Oh, Randall by 7. That's interesting. Okay. Because the Randall's going to bring some unbelievable. I mean, the running back there is just he's a great high school football player, and they got so much speed. Coach Shipley, what you got any thoughts on these?
Well, when you look at Randall averaging over 60 points a game in the playoffs, they're going to be hard to stop. Yeah, hard to stop. I think it's Randall by at least 7.
Coach Buck?
Well, I think Sock's going to handle Melissa and probably easier than what the computer says it is. Randall is just so talented, so talented. It's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be a South Oak Cliff Randall rematch.
Yeah. So, Carl, from a Bernie side down in your area, your neck of the woods, what is Bernie? What have they done to be very impressive to you this season going into this game? I mean, obviously they beat Alamo Heights 56-49 last week, but what's impressed you about Bernie this season?
Just the fact that brand new head coach told me before the year they had to rebuild the offensive line. They were unsure at quarterback, but I mean, Sweeney kid has been absolutely incredible. I mean, he threw the winning touchdown pass with 10 seconds last week, and they were actually down by 1 and then converted a 2-point conversion, to win by 7. They just seem to be able to get things done when they have to. And by the way, don't forget there's a trailer that starts at Bernie. And he had a big game last week. I mean, reminds you of Nolan Richardson talking about the bird. And so every time I switched back to the Bernie game last week, it's trailer makes the catch. A trailer makes the catch. It's like, wow. But he wasn't the only receiver making catches, and he didn't make the game-winning catch, but he sure had a bunch.
Then we'll jump over to 4A and the battle of the unbeatens right there, the one I've been waiting on, Stephenville and Salina. And then we have Kilgore and Lavernia. But let's start with Stephenville and Salina. Carl, I asked you about this earlier in the week. You said it's a 1 point, or Salina is a 1 point favorite. Basically, just pretty much too close to call. But Bob, we'll start with you. What do you think about this one?
Well, I think this is, to me, the state championship game. You know, one of these two. It's a shame they've got to meet up in the semifinals instead of the finals, because I think it would be one of the all-time great finals. I've got to go with Stephenville. Even though they started slow last week, then they roared back. I think Stephenville, I've got to give them the edge. Although, you know, Salina, obviously, they've battled through so much this season, you know, and they've been able to stay focused and had a pretty easy win against a good Alvarado team. But I've got to give Stephenville the nod. I don't know. Buck, what do you think? You know a lot about these two teams.
You know, I think Stephenville does have the edge. I really think they do. But I think that everything that's been happening in Salina has now become a positive for their football team. I really do. I think they are on a mission now, because everybody, you know, the media, and especially social media and everything, has turned that into a football issue. You know, everything starts off a championship football program. You know, all they care about is football. So I think those kids are on a mission right now, regardless of who's getting to coach them, that they're going to win a state championship. And I think that gives them an edge. So I'm going to take Salina.
Jerry, what do you think about their quarterback, Bo Bentley?
Really good football player, really competitive guy. He's kind of burst onto the scene last year from recruiting perspective, but very, very talented player. The one thing I would wonder about going into this game for Stephenville is how young they are versus Salina. You know, they're young on offense. I mean, they got another run coming in them next year, where Salina is going to be a little bit different, I think, in terms of losing quarterback and some other key pieces. I'd probably go with Salina just on the experience factor. But, I mean, like, when the computer's 1 point, I mean, it is really, really too close to call, which the next game we're going to talk about is not for me.
Which is Kilgore. Carl, your thoughts on the Kilgore game?
Well, they're favored by 9. You know, I saw Lavernia beat Davenport last week, and I was very impressed with their running game. You know, it's one of those things when you play someone and you have enough talent that you don't have to show both sides of your offense. It's hard to determine just how good the passing game is at Lavernia. Their running game last week was so great that they really didn't need much passing to beat them. Their defense played good enough to win. Kept Davenport out of the end zone a couple of times, and they wound up winning by 11. So can Lavernia stay with Kilgore? I mean, I don't think so. They sure didn't last year, because this is kind of like a rematch.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll see on Friday.
I like Kilgore. When your only loss is Carthage, you're starting in a good spot, first of all. But I think Kilgore is I think they're sneaky after they win this one. I think they're sneaky in the state title game a little bit too. I'm not going to say I pick them, but I think they're sneaky. I mean, that Alameda Crawford team, that new school down in Fort Bend, is very talented and fast, and they beat them 30-3 last week. Before that, Kilgore's playoff road was easy. Little Cypress, Breesville, Stafford, Bridge City. That doesn't really do much for me. Crawford has some talent now. I mean, they got a junior receiver that Texas A&M, people like that are on, Alvin Mosley. They got some other speed. So that was an impressive win for Kilgore in my mind, because, again, Crawford's a younger school, but they're fast. They back up to Iowa Colony, Manville, in that area. Every one of those schools has speed. So that was an impressive win by Kilgore. I like Kilgore pretty big in this one. Sorry, Lavernia fans, if you care. And I don't think you should or do.
In Division II, Brock and Carthage, and then West Orange, Stark, and Sinton. And Buck, I want to start with you with the Brock and Carthage game, because Jerry, a big believer in Carthage beating Brock. But what do you think about Brock hanging with Carthage?
Now, I'm going to I'm afraid that Brock can't hang with Carthage. I just don't think they have the football players to contain them. They are so good all over the field, but the running back, especially at Carthage, I can't see Brock matching up with them. Even though I want them to, I'm pulling for them. Crud, I got 2 kids that I raised coaching over there, but I don't see it happening.
Carl, what's your poll number on this one?
That's what I was about to ask.
Yeah, it is actually the closest game of the week. So it winds up being 1 point, but it was actually 0.8.
What?
So, yep, I see this.
First time I'm going to question the Padilla poll.
But the one thing Billy Mathis's team does that obviously Scott Surratt and Carthage don't like is they run the ball and they can waste time. If you're Carthage, Brock's wasting time by going on those 7-8 minute drives, and so that could keep this game much closer than most people think.
That's a good point. They could condense the game, less possessions. Because if it's a possessions game, Carthage is going to win handily. For
Brock to win, they're going to have the identical game that they did against Graham last year in the quarterfinals. And they're going to have to do exactly what Carl just said. Yeah. They're going to have to take the ball, drive the ball down the field, not make mistakes. And if they can do that, then they've got a shot. And I hope it's just as close as what that computer says is all I hope.
Bob, what are you thinking about that West Orange Stark Sinton matchup?
Well, it's going to be a good one. I lean towards Sinton, but West Orange Stark. Of course, the news Dan Hooks passed away this year, and that's don't underestimate that as an incentive because he's a legend in that town. And I'm sure they've dedicated their last couple of games to the memory of Coach Hooks. So that can affect a game and it can affect a team. And so I look for West Orange Stark to be on their A game, but Sinton, it's just saying. I hate to sound like a broken record, but West Orange Stark has had a little tougher road to get there. Than Sinton has, but I don't know. What do you say, Carl? What does the computer say on that game?
Got West Orange Stark by 5. Obviously, West Orange Stark played some really good teams to start their year, and they're only in a sense 11-3 on the season, but they did avenge the La Vega regular season loss last week by winning the important game, which is a playoff game. We'll see. They don't like to score a lot of points. Defensively, they've both given up almost exactly the same over the year. So I think West Orange Stark, they're going to win. They're going to have to just sit there and pound away on Sinton, and Sinton will try to do it any way they can on offense.
And the news about Coach Hooks passing yesterday. I said on our Coffee and Football show this morning, he's one of the few coaches that, as long as I've been in this, Coach Buck was that way as well. That, after I met him once or twice, I never had to really phone ahead to come by, attend the practice, come see the kid. If there's a kid I need to cover. Coach Hooks was awesome to me. He was awesome to me because, and again, I met him and Toby Foreman was on his staff and Toby introduced me to him. I actually called Toby before I stopped by West Orange and because I didn't know Coach Hooks at all. I knew who he was, but didn't know him. And even after the first meeting, he was like, come by anytime. You don't have to call. I'd just walk out on the practice field. They're 30 minutes in the practice. He'd just look over. He didn't have anybody check to see who I was. He was always so awesome to me. Coach Buck was the same way, by the way. So I really he made covering his kids fun for me. And by the way, he was pure entertainment himself. Let's put that one out there. To really good football coach, but he made it really easy on guys that like me that worked in the media. I'll say that it was fun. It was fun to cover his guys and fun to watch his practices. Maybe not as quite like a John King practice, which is the craziest thing I've ever been to in my business in years, and in a good way. But it was very entertaining and fun.
Well, let's move on to Class 3A and Peaster and Grandview, the Zebras, versus Yoakum and Llano. Carl?
Interesting games. I've got Peaster favored by 6 and Yoakum favored by 9. Grandview's been the biggest surprise probably in the playoffs this year to get this far. They are 12-2, went 4-1 in district. They've only outscored their 4 playoff opponents by 38 points. And I believe week 3 they beat Commerce by 1. This is a team that refuses to lose. We'll see. You know, Peaster lost to Paradise in district and has come back. You know, they beat them last week right at the end of the game. So they're another team that thinks this is their year. Very impressive defensively at Peaster. They've only given up 17 points in the playoffs. They've scored 100, given up 17. Grandview scored 188, given up 150. So kind of different things to look at. Will Peaster win because their defense is so good, or will Grandview win because their offense is better?
Coach Buck?
You know, Grandview's kind of got the tradition is winning in football, but Peaster's got a pretty good tradition in winning. You know, they've had some of the best one of the best basketball programs, small school basketball programs around, and they've always had unbelievable athletes come through that area. And I mean, it's freaky good. I know I watched them when I first went to Aledo. We went over there and watched a basketball game, and first thing I said is, "Damn, I'm glad they don't play football." They had big, good-looking kids, and a kid named Hall that he looked like Michael Jordan. I mean, he could run out there and jump. He was 5'11", but could dunk from anywhere on the court. I mean, he'd jump from the free throw line and go through the air like Michael Jordan and dunk a basketball. I mean, and they still have those type kids. So I like Peaster in this one. I really do.
Bob?
Peaster's a little bit like Brock, I guess, huh, Buck?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they just had great athletes, and they start the football program, and wow, you know, you look at Grandview. Grandview's won state championships. Peaster's the new kid on the block in this thing. I don't know how much that will play into it because, but you know, I've got a great nephew on that Peaster team, but I got to give Grandview a slight edge just because they've been there. You know, they've done it, and it's new for Peaster. Although that, you know, the opposite could be said too. You know, those guys at Peaster want to be the ones that put them on the map with a state championship. And you know, these 4 teams, goodness, if you had to ask me right now who was going to be the state champion out of 3A Division I, I would be hard pressed to tell you.
Carl, what is Yoakum? Before I'll get a point on Yoakum, what is the line for Yoakum Llano? What do we got?
Yoakum's favored by 9.
Okay, so what I like about Yoakum, one, they avenged the district loss to Columbus and beat them last week. But what I like about Yoakum, guys, is I'm very familiar with that district because of D1 players I've gone to see in recent years. You play against exceptional skill athletes at Hitchcock every single year. Hallettsville, with their style of offense, will make you play physical on defense, and then Columbus. That district, I think, really prepares you for a playoff run because you're not going to see guys faster than Hitchcock. Hallettsville is going to be very physical on offense up front against you, and Columbus has got some really good players, really well-coached team, and a kind of a winner's DNA. And, you know, Columbus, Hitchcock, Hallettsville, all those teams have made deep runs in the playoffs, and they all come out of the same district. And the fact that Yoakum avenged that earlier district loss against Columbus, beat them 20-14. I like Yoakum pretty big in this game. And one of the reasons is that district, I really believe, watching kids come out of there in recent years, they prepare you for the playoffs because you see it all.
I was just looking. Llano's They've had 5 games where they've allowed a touchdown or less this season.
Yeah,
So,
in this game, Lano, for the season has scored more points and they've given up less points than Yoakum. Lano, it's kind of a Cinderella year for them. This is something that, we haven't seen. Lano has been good and has made some runs, but it's been a while since they've been at this level. But I've got to give Yoakum this game.
yeah, we were on the receiving end of one of their beatings this year early in the season. So I've seen them firsthand, unfortunately.
And Yoakum's a lot like Stephenville, very young, freshmen, sophomores. I think they're related at quarterback, running back, underclassmen receivers. Obviously, they have the senior that's a very good power 4 player, but they're pretty young on offense.
Yeah, Yoakum's pretty explosive. Lano came from 10 down to beat Edna last week in the last 3 minutes, scoring 2 touchdowns. Wow. If you don't know, Matt Green is their head coach, and back in, I believe, 2010, 2011, he was the OC at Lake Travis when they played Denton Ryan. Oh. And Jerry, I'm sure you remember those 2 great D1 defensive ends for Denton Ryan. And Matt Green's game plan was so good, he took them out of the game.
Yeah.
And Lake Travis wound up winning when most people thought Denton Ryan would have won that game.
In spite of Lano winning the barbecue battle, I don't think they win this game.
Well, let's look at Division 2 because this is going to be another great game right here. I think Wall and Gunner, and then you have Newton and East Bernard. But Carl, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you tell me that Wall Gunner was 4 points in favor of Wall?
Yes, 4 points in favor of Wall. Another great defensive outfit at Wall. They've only given up 85 and scored 698.
Uh-oh. Yeah, that got Carl so excited he just left us for a moment. He may have got a phone
muted.
call. He muted his screen too. Yeah. We'll as we wait for Carl to come back. Any thoughts on either of these games, guys?
Wall is actually Craig Slaughter, the head coach there, used to be the head coach at Lano, actually, as a matter of fact. But I'm not so sure he's not a Wall grad. I kind of think maybe he is, but it's going to be a great game. I say Wall wins it.
Well, they've got 3 things in Wall: Catholic churches, football, and beer, and they're pretty good at all 3 of them. So should be a good game.
Hey, who was a great player at Wall, Buck, that played at Angelo State, that went and played in the NFL for years? I think the Reds. I can't remember. He was a defensive lineman. Holt?
Maybe. I'm trying to think.
Holt.
They've had some really good.
Yeah, they have.
But
Jerry, any thoughts on Newton and East Bernard?
Well, my number one thought every time East Bernard's brought up is I've never seen ever in my life somebody punt a football like Shane Leckler. And that's whenever I see East Bernard, it always comes back to me that I watched the game and Shane Leckler would kick it over the small school lights and a punt return could never know where the ball was. Like he was that good. Shane Leckler, unbelievable. Hall of Fame level guy, the best punter this state's ever had and will ever have, in my opinion. I like Newton to win the game. Newton runs the football exceptionally well, over 10 yards to carry on the season, 4,500 rushing yards. I think they've played a really good schedule. Newton has to get here. They're 13-1. Obviously, East Bernard 10-4, but their only loss for Newton is at West Orange Stark, and that was 32-24 competitive game. But they have taken on some people now, and they've won some big games in the playoffs. I like Newton to win it because I think they can run it. They have several guys that can run the football, and I think it's just going to be a little too much for East Bernard to handle. But East Bernard will always win the punting game for me in my lifetime.
By the way, Newton is favored by 9.
Yeah.
We thought maybe talking Wall got you so fired up that you had to leave, Carl.
You hit the wall.
So many people calling me, and it finally just disengaged the broadcast there. So.
That's all right. Well, let's look at 2A before we get out of here. West Texas versus Hamilton. And I'm probably going to butcher both of these names because I always do. Is it Joaquin? Am I saying that right, Carl?
Joaquin, you got it.
Joaquin is correct, and everybody butchers Refugio, but when you have a town that's that old and you have people coming in that can't roll their R's or their letters, and it winds up being what people call it Refugio.
Only thing I got to say about the first game, I don't care what your poll says, I'm going with Hamilton.
Yeah, Hamilton, I think it's going to win state, Carl. I'll go ahead and tell you.
Well, you're not going to believe it. Everybody made fun of me, but I got Hamilton favored by 4.
Yeah.
So defensively, they are the team. They've only given up 44 points in the playoffs, 155 for the year. I know West Texas has an incredible quarterback, and they've leaned on him all year long. And they sure came out of their shell in the playoffs against Cisco last week and pretty much buried them. We'll see what happens in this game. But, like I said, the computers got Hamilton by 4.
Man, Coach Marwitz just got all those programs at Hamilton rolling.
Coach Shipley, I know you're not going against Hamilton. Don't do it.
No, I'm not. But I just love it when a team that has, how many times has Hamilton been in the semifinals?
Yeah.
I mean, they were average for so long, and then for them to have the kind of team they have right now, I'm going with Hamilton all the way on that one.
Yeah, they got some talent. What about that second game? What's your spread on that one, Carl?
I am looking for something for Coach Shipley there. Refugio is favored by 10. Second biggest spread of the week after the North Shore Lake Travis game.
That one makes sense. I think it's just explosive offense as usual out of Furio, and multiple 1,000-yard rushers, right? They've got talent at wide receiver. They are just offensively so difficult. And I think Joaquin's played a pretty good schedule. But I like the Bobcats here.
And then Division 2 is what we'll wrap up with. Groover and Munster, and then Mount Enterprise and Shiner. Fellas, y'all's thoughts on that one?
What's your poll on that one?
Still trying to find that Hamilton thing for you. Munster is favored by 9, and Mount Enterprise, which is trying to break some records this week with the running back and the team, is favored by 4.
Wow. Coach Buck, what do you think?
Buck, I'm going to tell you this. Munster and Wall have the same 3 things in common, I'm sure.
Yeah, that is true. And that's the reason I'm going to go with Munster.
By the way, the Keegan Ash for Mount Enterprise, guys, for those that watch this and don't know his stats, against Bremond last week, 47 carries, 501 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
Hey, if you haven't seen this guy, you go, pull him up. Yeah. He is amazing.
He's played against Overton twice this season. He has carried the ball 61 times against the same team. District in the playoffs, 61 carries for 1,047 yards and 13 touchdowns against Overton. You think they'll be glad when that guy gets the hell out of town? They gave up over 1,000 yards rushing to the same player in 1 year. I've never seen anything like that in my life.
Yeah, they're liable to finish in the top 5 in points scored, especially if they win this game, and they have an outside chance of crushing Coach Buck's record at Aledo of 1,023 if they can average 75 the last 2 games.
Man.
Just hand them to that cat, and they may have a chance.
And by the way, Keegan Ash signed with Texas Tech as a linebacker, but in small school football, you aren't tackling that guy if he's got anything inside his heart. I mean, he got Coach. Well, how do y'all react that somebody had over 1,000 yards rushing in a season against one team?
I've never heard of that in my entire life. Never, ever, ever. Unbelievable.
By the way, guys, Hamilton's only been in the semis last year and this year.
Coach Ship was right on that one.
Yeah. Beautiful town, beautiful area.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Fieldhouse. Of course, when we come back next week, there will be a whole lot to talk. Look, not as many teams, but a whole lot to talk about as the state matchups will be all set. So we'll be back same time, same place then. So for Carl Padilla, Jerry Hamilton, Coach Bob Shipley, and Coach Tim Buchanan, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.